Dude, what's up? You want to talk like an American? Well, hold on, because there is no such thing as an American accent. Now, we've got an East Coast accent and a West Coast accent and a Southern accent. But if you want to talk like an American, you got to focus a little bit more specific. So I'm going to teach you my 3-step system on how to sound more like, well, a Californian, man. So listen up. And before we even get started, seriously, the first step that we got to take care of here is you got to listen. And you got to listen with your ears, not your eyes. See, a lot of other videos will give you a lot of flashy lessons with letters and reading and grammar, and you think you're learning English. But if you want to talk like an American, you want to speak like an American, or more specifically, as I'm going to teach you, a Californian, before we do anything, you got to listen with your ears. So I'm going to lean into the mic here so that you can hear this and hopefully take it all in and hopefully use it in your everyday life. My name is Kyle. I'm a Japanese YouTuber. You can see the link in the description. And I learned Japanese in 10 months. So everything I'm going to teach you about learning English is about how to become bilingual. And what do we mean by bilingual? Well, being able to speak 2 languages. And what do we mean by speak? It means, well, to speak, right? Not to read or write or to text, right? We want to talk. We want to speak. We want to have conversations. So if you speak English and you're having trouble talking to people or understanding people, or people are always asking you, where you from? Or what'd you say? Then you're in the right place, because I'm going to teach you accent, right? So let's get to the first step, the thing that you really got to focus on more than anything. It's not the grammar, it's not spelling, it's not even English. We're not even learning English here. And we're not even learning an American accent in the sense that there is no one American accent. We're going to be learning the California accent. That's the accent that I speak. And I was born in California. I was raised in California. I went to college in California. So everything that comes out of my mouth is 100% Californian. So you don't got to worry about anything. All right. So seriously, you got to focus on accent. This is the number one thing. This is the first thing before we even go to the next step, right? You really got to focus on accent. And how do you do that? Well, you can't see it. And that's why I kind of said before we start everything else, you got to listen, right? Because accent is what comes out of our mouths, right? Like it's our voice. And so if you're not paying attention to voices, human voices, and their accent, then you're totally studying wrong. I don't know what other schools are teaching you. I'm sure they gave you a book. I'm sure other videos are showing you things on the screen, lots of different things. But if you really want to focus on like becoming bilingual and speaking with a California accent or an American accent, right? You really gotta listen to human voices and the differences on how people pronounce words, right? Or the different slangs, right, that we use. That's our accent. And you're going to hear that. You're going to pick that up only by listening, right? Because, we can write a word, for example, water, right? And everybody's going to pronounce that differently depending on where they're from. So we can't focus on what we're looking at all. You know what I mean? We got to like literally listen to accent. And accent usually, generally speaking, there's lots of accents, right? Is usually an indicator where you're from. You know what I mean? Like I'm from California and you can hear it in my accent. If you talk to somebody from Texas, you can hear it in their accent. If you talk to somebody from New York, you can hear what neighborhood they're from, right? And so seriously, if you haven't focused on accent before, then you're probably going to have to rewire your brain. Like, you're going to have to forget a lot of things that you learned, because most likely what you learned was some sort of visual information, some sort of puzzle where you're writing and spelling and kind of like doing math in a sense. But that's just not how language works at all, right? It's all sound waves. It's literally invisible. You cannot see it. So if you haven't been focusing on accent before, now we're going to listen and we're going to focus on the sounds of English, right? But there's so many different varieties of English. What do? There's, the British English or the East Coast English, right? So to make it simple, we're going to focus on one, the American, but even then, let's be more specific because there's many American accents. So I'm going to be teaching you, I've already been teaching you for the past few minutes, the California accent, because everything that I say is a California accent, right? So the first thing is that we listen to an accent, a specific accent, not 20 different accents, just one accent. All right. And so here we are with the California accent. Now we're focused. Now we can move over to the next step, which is to mimic that accent. That's it. So we're not going to read and write right now. We're not going to take notes right now. We're going to mimic the accent. So if I say to you, dude, what's up? You say, dude, what's up? That's it. There's no thinking, right? Like, it's almost like you're a parrot. You just kind of like listen to a sound and you mimic it, right? That's all you got to do. So if you're not listening to a specific accent, then it's really hard to mimic. And without mimicking, you can't learn a language. I mean, think about it. When you're a baby, age 0 to 2, it's not like you're thinking. It's not like you're smart, I mean, from 0 to 2, you're just like listening, really, right? And by the time you start speaking, you're not really speaking. You're just mimicking what you heard. And if everybody around you talks with a California accent, you're going to literally talk with the California accent, because what else have you heard, right? It's not like you're reading textbooks online, right? So let's not overthink this, right? All you got to do is mimic. And mimicking requires listening to a specific accent, right? And then mimicking, right? No notes, no reading, no textbooks. Like, the video doesn't even matter. You can just close your eyes, right? So in order to mimic, I would say that you should find somebody to mimic. You know what I mean? And preferably that person is a real person that you're mimicking, not AI, and preferably not even a teacher, right? Like, teachers are going to be teaching you some version of like, I don't even know what to call it, educational English, right? Like, this is a pen. Would you like to go to the store? What are you doing today? Right? You've heard English like that before. That's not an American accent, really. Not one that anybody uses in reality. And it's definitely not a California accent, right? So, like in school, if they teach you, what are you going to do today? They're literally reading what English looks like. But when you listen to English, right? We say, what are you going to do today? Right? So it's totally different. And that, what are you going to do today, might sound really fast to your ear because you're so used to, what are you going to do today? Right? So we don't want to listen to teachers because they're basically not teaching us the real accents. We want to listen to real people. Now, what's a real person? Well, it's somebody that you find outside in reality and they're real, right? It's like, I don't want to teach online in the sense that like we're just online, you're holding your phone, right? But I understand that a lot of people are trying to learn English online, and that's cool. I get it. But like, you got to like go into reality and find a real human being and listen to their accent and mimic it. All right. That's it. Like, it's kind of like a Padawan, from Star Wars, right? It's an apprenticeship in a sense where you have not even a teacher, but somebody that you can copy, Because, like, if they say, "What are you going to do today?" You say, "What are you going to do today?" Right? However they talk, you talk exactly the same. So if they say dude, you say dude. And it's crazy because, like, when I was living in Tokyo, I knew a British guy and he would say mate a lot. And here in California, we don't say that. We say dude. So, like, after spending a lot of time with him, I would occasionally say mate, just like him, right? Just because of the influence, right? Of being together in reality. So if you want to learn British English, sure, say mate, right? But dude, if you want to talk like a Californian, you got to find a Californian and just like literally mimic exactly what they say. So if they say dude, you say dude. If they say bro, you say bro. You get it, right? Like if they say rad, you say rad. It's not complicated and you literally don't have to think about it. You know what I mean? Like you just take it in and say what they say. So in order to mimic, you really do have to focus on what they're saying, not what they're writing, right? And texting doesn't count, right? Reading the screen on a video doesn't count. It's the voice that counts. And then it's you taking your voice and trying to match it, right? It's kind of like if I sing like, then you want to sing, no, you don't want to sing the wrong note. You want to match it, right? So, right? And the same with accent. If somebody says accent, you don't want to say accent. You want to say accent, like mimicking, right? I shouldn't have to explain this because a baby does it without thinking. So if you don't understand the concept of mimicking, you're thinking far too much, bro. Like seriously, like stop thinking, kind of get zen with this shit and just mimic what you hear, right? So if I say mimic what you hear, you say mimic what you hear. Don't think about the spelling. That's like one of the key problems that most English learners do is they're like, well, how do you spell mimic what you hear, right? Like I hear this what you hear. So that's CH, right? And it's like, no. It mimic what you hear, right? But it doesn't matter, right? You understand what I'm saying. So you don't need to spell it. Not yet, at least. You just need to listen to the sound and mimic what you hear. All right. So then also too, let me just throw this in. Find one person to mimic. That's like good, right? But to really kind of round out the educational experience, you should probably find about 10 people that you can mimic. And when I lived in Japan, I was an exchange student. So I was going to school every day. So I had a host family. I had my host father, my host brother, right? My host mother, my host little brother, right? There's 4 people I can mimic right there. I had a host grandpa, and I remember mimicking him a few times, right? But then again, I had teachers at school, right? So a few of them. Then I had classmates. I remember Lee, he was in a class above me, and I remember mimicking him. So I had like more than 10 people to mimic. And then I had TV and music, right? So I had plenty of sounds to listen to and mimic, right? So yeah, one person is cool, right? Like you'll learn a lot. But like if you really kind of want to get like a real education on like the California accent, find 10 Californians that you can mimic. And it could be boys, it could be girls. It doesn't matter, because the more that you listen to or the more that you mimic, the more, I don't know, awareness you get of like how people actually talk, right? And if you're listening to somebody and you're like, wait a second, is that a California accent? And you're in reality and you ask somebody, hey, where are you from? And they're like, no, I'm actually from Texas. Then you're like, oh, wow, okay, that's funny because it sounds different. And so by trying to find 10 Californians, and then you hear somebody and they sound different to you, and like, oh, they sound like a Texas person, right? You learn even more, right? So it's really important not just to mimic one person, but 10 people. And in that search, you begin to discover, oh, you're from New York, or oh, you're from Texas. Oh, wow. Cool. That's cool. No problem, right? It's not like it's a problem to listen to Texas English or New York English, right? But just to make your studying simple, you should focus on one accent, right? And by doing that and making that one accent really strong, then when you hear another accent, you're going to hear it way more loud than before because you're so used to the California accent. As soon as somebody kind of talks in a different accent, you're like, hey, wait, you're talking different, right? And so that's what happened to me when I learned Japanese. I was in the countryside, not in Tokyo, but near Kyoto, in the countryside of Kyoto. So everybody had an accent. And I didn't even know that when I first got there. I thought I was just learning Japanese. But as I began to learn the accent, right, of that location near Kyoto, when I talked to people from like Tokyo, they sounded completely different and I could tell, right? So this is what's going to happen to you once you start focusing on one accent, California accent, and you start mimicking not just one person, but 10 people, right? You're going to start hearing all the different accents, right? Because you're focusing on one accent. So we want to listen to an accent and mimic 10 people. Now, the third and final step, which is actually the most important step if you actually want to speak like a Californian, is to make mistakes. It's not going to be easy, right? It's not like it just goes in and comes out, right? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You might actually need to make some mistakes. And in fact, you will make mistakes, and that's okay. The only thing that you got to do is actually keep track. This is when you want to take notes, all right? Because the key system that I did when I was learning Japanese was I would go through reality, say what I wanted to say, and listen to as many people as I could. And anytime I encountered something I didn't understand, I would say, hey, what's that mean, right? And then I would take a note. I always had a little flashcard deck with me, little keychain one, and I would write them down. And then after school, I would go back home, pull out my little flashcard deck, and work on the word that I wanted to say, right? I remember one time I had plans to go somewhere, but I changed my mind and I went somewhere else. And my host mother said, my host mother said to me, like, well, you said you were going over there. And I didn't know how to say, well, I changed my mind. Right? So I felt this kind of like stupidity, right? Like, what do I say? I don't know. I don't know how to express this, right? So I made a note, I looked it up, right? Got the dictionary out, and I figured it out, right? So you kind of have to run into mistakes, right? Either you don't understand what somebody's saying, or what you say is kind of like a little off, right? So there's two kinds of mistakes, but this is when you take notes. And while you're with somebody listening and trying to mimic, right, you don't got to get too deep into studying and writing, pause the conversation. Let me start taking notes. Let me start getting out the dictionary, right? And get on your glass. You don't have to go that far. While you're having a conversation with somebody or a group of people and you realize that you don't understand something, right? just take a quick note, right? Like that's what it's really for. Notes, right? Is just like a quick little note. And then hopefully what you do is you make a list, right? Through your experience and only your experience, right? Like you don't have to start studying rocket science just because it's English, right? You just got to focus on the problems that you're experiencing in your life. Because what else would you study, right? Like you don't got to start studying like economics just because like the textbook says that's the next chapter. You only got to focus on your mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, then why are you watching this video, right? So, like, you already speak English, right? So, and you already speak with an accent, right? But if you feel like you're making mistakes, if you feel like you don't got the California accent down, right? Like, if you feel like when you speak, you're saying things like, well, people understand me, but they, like, obviously can tell I'm from another country. Well, let's call that a mistake, okay? It's not technically a mistake. I'm not saying that your accent is wrong per se, but if your goal is to speak like a Californian, well, then let's just call that not ideal and let's try to improve it. Okay. Like, I don't want to pick on anybody that has an accent, right? And call it bad or anything like that. That's not the point of this like educational video. I'm just literally trying to teach you the California accent, right? So if you feel like you made a mistake, right? Like, for example, water, but you say water. You hear the T, right? Water. Let's call that a mistake because we don't say water, we say water. In fact, it's really hard to say water. Like it feels so awkward, you know? Or another word that I remember talking to somebody from New Zealand, and I was talking about like, there's no snow in wintertime. And he was like, what? And I was like, what? What do you mean, what? Like, there's no snow in wintertime, dude. And he's like, oh, winter. And I was like, well, yeah, whatever, wintertime, right? Like, we don't say the T in California, I guess, a lot of times, like mountain, right? Like, so anyway, a lot of little details will come out when you start focusing on accent. But once you start to notice, oh, like, okay, like I said, water, make a note. That's it. Especially when you're outside talking to real people, like enjoy the conversation you're having. Stay focused on the sounds and just take a few notes if you make a mistake or you hear something that you don't understand, right? Because if somebody says something like, hey, what are you going to do tomorrow? And you're like, what do you mean? Like, try to, you can ask a question like, can you say that again, right? Or what do you mean, right? That's totally cool. But you're like, oh, what are you going to do tomorrow? Here, make a note and then try to figure that out later, right? Now, there's not a lot of teachers that teach what are you going to do tomorrow? And, well, here I am. This is what I do. But like, you figure it out later. So you make the list from your experience in reality, right? You got this list of mistakes. And then when you get home at the end of the day, preferably like, evening time when you're kind of relaxing, then you go through the list and you start working on it. You start trying to improve. You kind of start practicing to yourself. So you see the water, right? And you make a note and you're like, oh, the T is a D. Okay. This is where you think about things kind of like a student, right? This is where you can take notes. You can write. You can make a handwritten. Now, typing is fine too, right? If you're doing this on your iPhone, but the point of the note isn't to learn how to spell it, right? Like, what are you going to do tomorrow? How do you spell that, right? The point of the note is to remember the sound of it, right? Like, remember, you got to listen to accent and you got to mimic, right? So the note isn't to learn spelling or reading or writing or texting. The note is so you can remember that sound somehow, some way, right? So if somebody says water and you write the WADER, right? Like, that would be one way to remember. Another way is to use my color system here. And if you notice, the black T, right, is water. But you'll see this gray T. And this gray T actually is a D because the T in American English, California English, really becomes a D a lot. So with this note, you can now see clearly, oh, the T is a D in this case, right? So it's water. So the T becomes a D a lot. Now you notice that a lot, I didn't say the T at all, right? So that was actually a glottal stop, and this color right here shows that it's a glottal stop. So with the visual note, hopefully you can hear the sound, not just memorize the spelling, because who cares about spelling? We want to speak like a Californian, right? So if I say water and you're like, okay, I got to memorize this. Well, this gray T will help you memorize water, right? Or a lot. The T is a glottal stop. You don't say it, right? It disappears, right? Or even the example from earlier, wintertime, it's not even a glottal stop. I didn't say the T. It's gone. It disappears, right? So now you have a way to take notes and remember the sound more than anything. So if you want to look up words in the American accent with this color system, get my free dictionary, Aura English HD. The link is in the comment section. It should be pinned and it should be in the description of the video. It's a free app available exclusively for the iPhone, and you can look up any word, see the color, so you can remember, oh, the sound, the accents of any word that you're studying. And what's cool, it's not really like a lesson in the traditional sense. It's a dictionary. Like, you can look up any word that you want to learn, because after all, the only place you're going to learn is from reality, not books, not textbooks, not classrooms. And so the only book that I really used when I was really learning Japanese was a dictionary. And I wish I had an electronic dictionary, but I actually had like a thick dictionary back in the day. So the only book that you really need is a dictionary. But this, my free dictionary here, is encoded with this color system that makes it a lot easier to see the American accent. So with this tool, you make mistakes, right? Well, you make mistakes in reality, right? But with this tool, you take the list of mistakes and you punch it in, you look up each word, and then you create a flashcard. And with that flashcard, you try to remember the sound, right? So when you do flashcard work, you basically got to do a lot of repetitions, and you kind of got to say the words to yourself, right? So water, 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 right? Do it without looking. Water, water, water. All right. Next word. Winter, winter, winter. All right. Winter, winter, winter. All right. Next word, right? And you could do phrases too, like, what are you going to do today, right? Or two words, right? So like want to becomes wanna. So want to, wanna. All right. And you kind of practice by yourself, right? And then if you really want to take it to the next level, you start to imagine being able to use the word in reality. Like, okay, wanna. All right. I want to go to the beach. I want to talk like a Californian. I want to get a burrito, right? You start to use the word in various phrases that you can actually use in reality when you're hanging out with the 10 people that are, speaking Californian to you. So this is the process. The only 3 steps, with the secret 0 step of always be listening, right? But if you take these 3 steps in reality, you're going to learn the California accent now. You've already been learning the California accent for the past, 10 minutes already, because you're always listening, right? But as soon as you focus on accent, California accent, right? And then you start to mimic, and you can even start mimicking literally right now as you're watching this video, as you're listening to this video, right? And then as you mimic, you basically try to keep up with the native speaker. So here's the native speaker, here's you, and you just try to keep up. If they go up, you go up. If they go down, you go down, right? But as soon as you notice that you said something different, or they said something that you didn't understand, and there's like a separation, right? So it's like water, right? You stay together, right? But then it's like entrepreneur, and then you're like, what? Like, what did you just say? Right? That's, let's call it a mistake, or let's just call it something you need to learn. And then you take a note. That's it. Because seriously, reality is where you're going to learn everything. And if you're learning from a book, if you're learning from a school, if you're learning from a video, you're not really learning. You're kind of just half learning in a sense, because everything you learn, you have to apply in reality, right? To an actual conversation with people. So that really becomes like this fourth secret step that I haven't really mentioned yet. But the key to everything is conversations with real people in reality. And as long as you're doing conversations, you're okay. But then as long as you focus on their accent and mimic it and work on your mistakes, you're going to get better in, let's just say, 6 months. It depends on how often you do it, but definitely every day. And if you only practice like an hour a day, progress is going to be slower. But if you practice 10 hours a day, well, you can start to sound like a Californian in like 3 months, right? So, because think about it, there's only so many things you say every day, right? You go to work, you go to school or whatever, right? So inside of work, what do you talk about, right? It's the same kind of, if you work at a cafe, it's like, hey, what can I get you? Would you like a coffee? Do you like matcha? There's only so many words you got to learn, like 20, 30, 40, 50 words, right? And then you got my dictionary, so you can look up any word, even if you work at a cafe, or if you work in a rocket science lab, you can look up any word with my dictionary. So then you make the mistakes, you take the mistakes, you make flashcards, and with my free dictionary, you can make flashcards and you can study with them. And then you literally work on it by yourself. And then you go back to your work, or you go back to your school, and then you try to say the word that you've been working on, right? And then you make progress. And as soon as you say something like perfectly, right? Like, oh, I want to get a burrito, and there's no problem, there's no mistake, well, then forget it. Just like, it's no longer a mistake. Congratulations. You've learned something, you mimic something, you said it correctly, and like, move on. Keep having a good conversation with whoever you're talking with. And then next time you make a mistake, well, you put that new word onto the list, right? And if you do this process, your list will always be like 10, 20, 30 words, and you'll start to erase words from the list, but then you're going to start to add words to the list as you keep going. But after a while, if you're just having normal conversations with normal people in reality, you're not going to be making a list anymore, because you're already talking about the things that you always talk about, and you've worked on it, you've improved, and now you talk like a Californian, bro. So like, when are you going to get it, right? It starts now by listening to accent, right? Not to accents, but listening to accent, right? And then mimicking it, and then learning from your mistakes. That's the 3-step process. And that's how you're going to speak like a Californian right now. So I appreciate you listening to this little video. I'd rather talk to you in reality, but this is the power of the internet, that I'm able to, contain my voice into these machines and spread them across the algorithm. So if you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. This is a new channel because, like I said, I'm a Japanese YouTuber, but this is my English channel. Like, it kind of makes more sense to teach English in English, right? So I'm going to continue to make videos like this.